Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Bryant at the Merowith Center. So our guide today is Elana Kaplan, former St. Louisan and an independent museum educator and lecturer. She was an educator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art for 25 years and currently leads private tours at the Met and other museums, as well as virtual tours for groups around the globe. So we are very lucky. In December, Elana highlighted how Greek and Roman art connects to Hanukkah. Last month, Elana covered some of the Met's most memorable winter scenes. And today, she's back to present another look at the ever-evolving American wing at the Met. And just as we're getting ready to celebrate President's Day. So please help me welcome back Elana Kaplan, and we're always so very happy to see you, Elana.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you always for planning these programs. So when Laura and I started talking about this series many, many months ago, I think it was probably over the summer, and we planned this one to coincide with President's Day. But actually, it worked out perfect timing because the Met is right now celebrating the centennial of the American wing. So it's very exciting. We're going to look at a new work of art that was unveiled for the centennial, and some things that have been there since 100 years ago. So it's a great time to do this program. So I'm just going to start with my screen share. Okay, so just a little bit of a background of the American wing. Ever since the American Wing's establishment in 1870, the Met has acquired important examples of American art. A separate American wing to display the domestic arts of the 17th to early 19th centuries opened in 1924. Painting and sculpture galleries and a skylit courtyard were added in 1980. And here we can see the amazing skylit courtyard that I was referring to. And we'll have a chance really to explore this room in a video and a virtual tour during our program. So today, the Wing's ever-evolving collection comprises some 20,000 works of art by all different American artists, including African-American, Euro-American, Latin American, and Native American men and women. The works of art range from the colonial to early modern periods. The holdings include painting, sculpture, works on paper, and decorative arts, which is what we'll be focusing on today. And the decorative arts include furniture, textiles, ceramics, glass, silver, metalwork, jewelry, basketry, quill, and bead embroidery. So it's a very vast collection. We also have many historical interiors and architectural fragments, which we will also be exploring today. So as you can see, just from what I've mentioned, and the 20,000 works of art, we could do multiple sessions just on the American wing. But since we've done paintings in a couple of our programs in the past, today, as I said, we're really going to focus on decorative art, specifically on stained glass windows and period rooms and furniture. So here we're looking at the Engelhard Court, which is really the entrance to the American wing. And we enter looking at this bank facade here that we'll talk about in a few more minutes, and also a lot of our stained glass windows. This space, this Engelhard Courtyard, first of all, it's an inside-outside space. You can see all the light coming in from Central Park, but it does have a glass rooftop, so it is inside. But it really encompasses a lot of American art, from stained glass windows to furniture, sculptures, as you can see, architectural spaces. It's really an amazing space. And as you can see, like the monumental sculpture, there's also silver, gold, glass, and ceramics on the balconies on the side over here. What we'll be focusing on today, later on, is really narratives, American domestic architecture and furniture through period rooms. The Met has about 20 period rooms. We're just going to touch on a few of them, but they have historical interiors spanning from the 1680s to 1915. And we'll actually see one from 1680 and one from 1915. So we'll see the bookends. And of course, there's a changing rotation throughout the galleries of paintings, sculptures, works on paper, and textiles. We also have this amazing space on the second floor, which is called the Henry Luce Center for the Study of American Art. And it's basically an amazing open storage area and installation space. So usually storage is like, you can't get to it, it's underground, and that's what a lot of our storage is. But here in the American, we have the space of open storage, which is just cases and cases of paintings and furniture and all kind of decorative arts that we don't have enough space to show in the galleries, but we show in open storage space. Hopefully at the end, we'll have a little time to look at that as well. So as I said, we are celebrating the 100th, the centennial of the American Wing. It actually started in November 2024. That's when they started celebrating the 100th anniversary. And they did that with the reinstallation of the extensive collection of art and design. And they've actually done some new interpreting on different galleries on 3 floors and showing the connections between the American Wing's increasingly hemispheric holdings from the mid-17th to mid-20th century, but also with some contemporary expressions. And as I said, it's an amazing collection. And what we're going to do today is we'll see they put out a video. It's about a half-an-hour video celebrating the centennial. We're just going to watch the first couple of minutes because I want you to get a sense of the space, first of all, of this Engelhard courtyard, but also inner spaces. As you're watching it, any of you who have been on some of my past programs will recognize some of the paintings and some of the other works of art. And there'll also be period rooms that you'll see that we'll focus on later today. So we'll watch about 3 minutes of the video, again, to give us an idea of the space and to hear the director and curator talk about the centennial.
The American Wing at the Met is at the very center of the understanding of this museum, of the understanding of the genesis of this great institution, and also for the understanding of how American art and how American culture came into being. And it allows you to appreciate American art at its best and American history at its most complex.
The American Wing is the Met's historical collection of American art. That is American decorative arts and fine arts, painting, sculpture, works on paper, broadly from the mid-17th century to the mid-20th century. It was founded in 1924 as a department of historical decorative arts, primarily furniture. And when you came in 1924, what you would have seen were these rather innovative settings of so-called period rooms or historical interiors. We're marking the 100th anniversary of the Wing, and in that time, really focusing more on the collection and how the collection has evolved. We've been just seeing how far we've come in 100 years.
And what I find so fascinating, as someone who, of course, comes from Europe, it is a way to get to know American art and culture. For an international audience to really experience American art in all its development, in all its complexity, in all its diversity.
The American Wing was founded during a really extraordinary colonial revival zeitgeist that was crossing the nation. And this interest in telling certain histories of this country, certain British American histories, as a way to introduce and build identity actually for newly arrived Americans. That was our founding mission in 1924. It was obviously a more narrow focus on what was American. And in the 20s, that meant British America. So that's what's so exciting to think about over these different decades, how we've continued to broaden the collection, bringing fine arts, quote, painting, sculpture, drawings into the realm of the decorative arts as well. And here we are, in fact, our first artifact, Martin Thompson's second bank of the US down on Wall Street.
How meaningful, of course, as well, not only as a neoclassicist facade, as a preservationist idea, but also it's a bank.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So you are in New York, you are in the center of also capitalism, right? And this is the entry towards the American Wing, the entry towards the idea of American culture.
Robert DeForest, who was the president of the Met when he saved this facade, had this vision that this would be the entrance to what is still the core of the American Wing. We still honor that history because, it defines us still. But of course, what's inside those galleries now is far more diverse, far more complicated, really looking at those challenging histories in fresh ways. The American Wing at 100, this major centennial.
Okay, great. So hopefully through the video, if anyone who's interested in watching the whole half-hour video, you can go on the Met website or on YouTube and put in Met American Wing Centennial and see. But hopefully you got an idea of the diverse, huge and diverse collection. And a lot of the things, hopefully you've either seen with me before, some of the paintings, and a number of them we'll see again, we'll see today. Well, we're actually going to start with the first work of art, there's a work of art that was specifically installed for the centennial, an amazing Tiffany stained glass window. And I'm going to spend a lot of time on it because it's an amazing work of art and it is central to this centennial celebration. I'm just going to go back to the beginning of the video so you can see what the window looks like in the space. And then we'll look at it through my images. And I'll just point it out. It's opposite the bank. It's actually, when you stand in this room, it's right here. So I'll stop right here. So we're going to be looking at this window up close. This is a new installation. There used to be a different Tiffany stained glass window there. It's a new installation surrounded by these columns from Tiffany's home. And this is where we're going to be spending a little bit of time on this incredible work of art. So I'm going to go into our next space. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we are looking at a three-part garden landscape. And the Met actually acquired this work a year ago in December 2023. It was designed by Agnes Northrop in the studios of Louis Comfort Tiffany, and it's based on a signed design drawing for the center panel that's been in the Met's collection, which we will see shortly. So as part of the Met's 100th anniversary, the window was installed in the Charles Engelhard Court, which we were just looking at in the video. It was just installed in November 2024. Which was amazing to see. And the window is dramatically framed by the columns that we saw from Laurelton Hall, which was Tiffany's Long Island country estate. And these are just up close, the columns. So you'll notice that there's a different window behind it because we don't have an updated picture yet of the new window. This is a Tiffany window that used to be in the space. And now, of course, we have the garden landscape. As I said, the columns that you see here were originally in Tiffany's home, and we'll go into that a little later on when we look at these works of art. So this window we're looking at, the three-part garden landscape, was originally commissioned by a woman named Sarah Cochran. She lived from 1857 to 1936. She was a Pittsburgh businesswoman and philanthropist, and she commissioned these windows for her home. We're looking at her home here. It's called Linden Hall. It was a Grand Tudor Revival estate that she herself had built in 1912 in Dawson, Pennsylvania. She had it built actually after her husband's death, and it's a very interesting story. Just a little bit of a background to Sarah Cochran, the woman behind the commission of the stained glass window. This is her we're looking at. She was born in 1857 to farmers of such humble means that they couldn't afford enough clothes for her to go to school every day. So that was her beginning. As a young adult, she became a housemaid, and she actually became a housemaid for a family, and she would go on to marry the son, the heir of that family. His name was Philip Cochran, and he was a sole heir to a coal fortune. So she became actually the lady of the estate that she had once cleaned. She was widowed very young. And their son also died very young while he was in college. He went to the University of Pennsylvania. He died when he was college. So she took on the management of the family's complex business interests, naming her the nickname, the nation's only coal queen. At the same time as she did that, she was traveling around Europe seeking inspirations, furnishings, and antiques for this new home that she was having built back in Pennsylvania. So construction of Linden Hall began in 1911, and she commissioned Louis Comfort Tiffany to create the stained glass windows for the Great Hall in 1912. Now you'll notice that this middle window is one of the three-part that we saw in the Met. And this is the window that she commissioned with Tiffany, and she personally requested the subject of this window, which represents a lush landscape and a garden suggestive of her own garden at her estate. As you can see, the window was placed on the stair landing of the house, and it enticed the viewer up the marble steps. And this is what it looks like in the museum. But you'll see that it offers a long vista through tall, majestic pines flanking a central fountain, which you can see over here, amidst a lot of flowers. As you're looking at it, you might see that they're pink and blue hydrangeas, they're poppies, and they're nasturtiums. And the two side panels that you'll see on the left side panel, they're all different kind of flowers. For anyone who gardens, you might recognize some of these flowers: hollyhocks, foxglove and peonias. And on the right side, there are hollyhocks, and they're all of this, as you're looking at it, keep in mind this is all created out of stained glass, which is really unbelievable. Now, all these flowers and the subject matter were subjects favored by Agnes Northrop, the designer, and aligned with the comforting nostalgia of the, quote, old-fashioned garden. The mansion, Linden Hall, was built in the vicinity of Sarah Cochran's childhood home, and it was built between 1911 and 1913. When it was finished, her house had over 30 rooms, its own railroad stop, and this, of course, the 3-panel Tiffany window, which was designed by Agnes Northrop. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the designer of the window, Agnes Northrop. This is a picture of her on the left, and on the right is actually her watercolor painting that she did. You'll notice from the center, it's the watercolor painting that the center of the 3-part panel was based on. So she was actually Agnes Northrop was one of the most important designers in Tiffany's employment, and she was his preeminent female designer. It was a field that was dominated by men, so she really established herself as one of the leading designers of windows, and she was recognized for her work by winning a prestigious award at the Exposition Universelle in Paris in 1900. She helped shed light on the critical and often unrecognized role played by women in the art of Louis Comfort Tiffany. A lot of that came to light much later on, that she had a lot of women who were designing and creating the stained glass windows. But together, Northrop and Tiffany pioneered new landscape and garden subject matter for stained glass. And the window we were looking at, of course, reveals Northrop's careful observation of nature and her gift for translating it into glass. So again, just a little bit of a background about Agnes Northrop, because she is so important in creating this unbelievably monumental window. And as I'm talking about her, I'll give you a few more minutes just to look at it, because it's just an incredible work of art. So Agnes Northrop was first hired as a young woman in the 1880s. She quickly became a key figure in Tiffany's design empire. She continued to play a central role in Tiffany's studio even after Tiffany himself retired, up until the company closed in the early 1930s. So she worked with Tiffany, or for the studios, for close to 50 years. She had natural talent and was very evident early on. Shortly after she was hired to join a group of women who cut and selected glass for windows and mosaics for Tiffany & Co. Let me show you a picture of what these women workers looked like in the early 1900s. So a lot of women were hired to cut and select the glass, as you can see here, for the windows and for the mosaics. But shortly after she was hired, she was asked to assist in designing the leaded glass windows, for which Tiffany, of course, would earn worldwide acclaim, even though, as I said, he had a lot of people working on these windows. Certainly wasn't just him. By 1895, Northrop was designing windows entirely on her own. She had established herself as one of Tiffany's most trusted artists, and she was one of the privileged few granted a private studio in the Manhattan workrooms of Tiffany Studios. So Agnes Northrop, who again we see on the left here, was known for finely executed floral and landscape compositions, and she relied on her own preparatory studies in watercolor and pencil. You can see the one on the right that she made for our window. So she would create these amazing watercolor works of art. She also would look at photographs of different botanical gardens and flowers and historical subjects in order to create the design for her glass windows. She really contributed to some of Tiffany's most well-known stained glass windows, and we'll look at one more that she was responsible for in a little while. So this garden landscape window is really Northrop's masterpiece. Again, it was made at the height of Louis Tiffany's career, around 1912, and it was conceived, commissioned, and crafted entirely by women. Important to keep in mind. As we're looking at it, you see it features flowers in bloom from spring to summer. And it shows this really luxurious garden perennially in bloom. It's a 20-foot installation, and it's comprised of thousands of pieces of real glass. So it's really a tour de force. It's just an amazing work of art that was just unveiled in November. And you can see that Northrop also was exploiting the very textures, the lush colors, the special glass that was created in Tiffany Studios in Corona, Queens. She used a lot of very innovative techniques, which we'll talk about in her next stained glass window. It was really an ingenious selection of glass, as well as also, as you saw in that picture, cutting the glass into often thousands of pieces in almost impossible shapes that we see here that was done by Tiffany's skilled artisans. Tiffany, when he saw this finished window, it was such an incredible work of art that he first, before it was sent to the Linden House, it was put on public view in his Manhattan showroom on 37th Street and Fifth Avenue, and then it was shipped to Sarah Cochran's home in Pennsylvania. Now, just a little bit about what happened from the time that window was, the story of the window from the house it was in Pennsylvania until it got to the Met. A little bit of background of that. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Sarah Cochran's journey and what happened to the windows. So as I said, she inherited her husband's coal business. She also built that mansion. But besides all that, she channeled her wealth and influence into philanthropic ventures. Specifically, she was very involved in women's suffrage. So when she died in 1936, she actually gave her home at Linden to her brother. It passed through several hands over the next few decades, including an order of monks, before the United Steelworkers Union bought the estate in 1976. Now, in 2005, the United Steelworkers Union sold these windows to a private buyer for $6.8 million. That was in 2005. And they replaced the stained glass window with simple, clear panes. And they explained, the union said the reason that they did that, even though it was very unfortunate, it was necessary because, as you can imagine, the huge cost of insuring these Tiffany stained glass windows was increasingly unaffordable for the United Steelworkers Union. So for nearly 2 decades, the Linden Hall garden landscape was completely out of view. And then earlier this year, funds from a number of donors made it possible for the garden landscape to be brought back to light so that everyone could see it. The donors bought it for the Met, and they were installed just about 2 miles south of where they had once graced Tiffany Studio showroom at the Met, near the Met. So it's really an amazing journey. It's an amazing work of art. Anyone who's going to be in New York, anytime in the near future, definitely interesting to look at and to see. And of course, this again is the design for the window that was done by Agnes Northrop. It's watercolor, gouache, and graphite on woven paper. It's actually very small. I made it larger. It's 13 inches by 7 inches. In the mat, it's 19 by 14 inches. But I think it's amazing to look at that because we really get to see, the step, how Agnes Northrop first did this gouache, watercolor, and pencil, and then it was created out of stained glass. So now I want to look at another one. I referred to the fact that Agnes Northrop created some of Tiffany's most well-known stained glass windows. So I want to look at another one of those. This is it. It's called Autumn Landscape. This one was made about 10 years after the last window we're looking at. It was made from between 1923 and 1924. It's also a huge stained glass window. It is 132 by 102 inches. So it is, it's about 11 feet tall. It's kind of hard to tell from this, but it's about 11 feet tall and has over 1,000 pieces of stained glass fitted together almost like a puzzle. By the way, each piece of glass you'll notice is different size, different shape, and they're connected by lead. Molten lead is kind of the glue that keeps all these pieces together. There's no painting here. It is all completely made out of colored glass. It's really a tour de force in terms of its medium, and it was executed later in Tiffany's career. And of course, it portrays the late afternoon sun filtered through the rich autumn foliage. Again, this one was designed by Agnes Northrop, who is very well known for her landscape and flower stained glass windows. Again, keep in mind, it's completely made out of stained glass. There's no paint added for the detail. Rather, the modeling, texture, and form were created solely with glass, which really shows the incredible range developed at the Tiffany Studios. So this painting actually has achieved the nuances of, I'm sorry, this window, I called it a painting. It's a window, but it's actually achieved the nuances of a painting. It really has an amazingly realistic effect. And if you stand far away from the stained glass window in the museum, it really does look like a painting, which is incredible. Many new glass techniques were used to create this window. So as you're looking at it, I'll point out a couple of these new techniques. The variegated surface was made by wrinkling glass in its molten state. Okay, this is a close-up of the window, so you can really see the pieces of glass close up. It's from the bottom right hand part of the stained glass. So we're looking at this was the center, bottom center, and bottom right. We're going to look at them close up so we can see different types of glass. So we can see the different color effects were achieved by embedding tiny confetti-like flakes of colored glass in the surface. So you can see this confetti glass over here, which makes it look like, real leaves. You can also see the ripple glass with the rippling textures to make the water look like it's moving over here. The other thing that Tiffany Studios did here was something called plating, which was a superimposition of several layers of glass on the back of the window, and that adds depth, which makes the mountains look far away and misty. So there's even perspective in the stained glass window, which is really unbelievable. Also, you can see here this green tree trunk, and it looks bumpy, actually, because of the textured glass. And the other thing that we can see is over here with the rocks, the gray and white rocks are made from marbleized glass. So really, Tiffany Studios was quite innovative in terms of the stained glass. And it's just an incredible work of art. The subject matter is distinctly American. It's emblematic of the river of life, which was a theme that was often used in stained glass windows for churches and mausoleums at this time. The window was commissioned in 1923 by a man named Laurel de Tulle for the stair landing of his enormous neo-Gothic mansion in Boston. So similar to the last window we looked at, both of them were commissioned for homes and stair landings. However, this window was never installed in his home because the person who commissioned it passed away before it was finished. So in 1925, Robert W. DeForest, who is the president of the Met at the time. He was also the founder of the American Wing, and he was a very close friend of Tiffany's. He donated the window to the Met. So this window has been at the Met since the American Wing founding in 1925, and so it's been there for 100 years, which is incredible. So again, just to understand, as I said before, how Tiffany was able to make so many works of art in glass, he of course employed dozens of artisans, as we saw in that picture. Now, he rarely spoke of the designers, whether male or female, who worked for him. And that only came to light later on, how many people worked, and especially the women who were known as Tiffany girls. So it's important to give credit not just to Tiffany, but for all the people who were employed by Tiffany and helped create all these amazing works of art. So here we have the columns that we saw in the Engelhard courtyard. Now, again, the Tiffany window that's behind it is a different window. Right now, we have recently installed a 3-part garden landscape, but we don't have a good picture of it yet. But here I really want to focus on the columns we're looking here, which were from Laurelton Hall, which was Tiffany's home in Oyster Bay, New York. And these were made in 1905. So this is really also an unbelievable work of art. And this actually once served as an entrance to Tiffany's home on Long Island, which he designed for himself between 1902 and 1905 at the height of his career. I want to show you a picture of this amazing Laurelton home that Tiffany designed for himself. And you can see, hopefully in the background, I'll show you another picture also, but you can see at the entrance, the same exact columns that we have now in the American Wing were in Tiffany's incredible home. So again, the American Wing is comprised of all different kinds of art, including architectural interiors and spaces. So this Tiffany's home was an 84-room, 8-level estate situated on nearly 600 acres overlooking Cold Spring Harbor in Oyster Bay, New York. And it was really a showcase for his unique integration of nature and art. It was really the ultimate expression of Tiffany's aesthetic ideals envisioned as a total work of art. This is really his dream home where creativity flowed freely and convention was not as important as novelty. This Laurelton Hall was really the crowning achievement of Tiffany's multifaceted career. So after he established the Louis Tiffany Foundation in 1918, this estate actually became the site for a residential summer program for artists, where artists would come and spend time creating art. Now you can see it a little bit closer up. You can see, again, the exact columns that we have and the lamps. The Tiffany stained glass lamps are now in the Met. And the reason for that is because in 1957, the house was tragically destroyed by fire. So some architectural elements were salvaged, including what we have here, and preserved in different museum collections. And the Met got this 4-column work of art, and it's really quite a treasure. So if you look at them, there's a lot of detail here that we won't spend time on, but if you look closely, there are 4 different kind of flowers over here in different states of bloom. So we have lotus, peony, poppy, and magnolia, and they're in various stages of bloom. Let's just look at one really close up over here. You can see that the blossoms are made of glazed ceramic. We have glazed ceramic here, and the green stems are slivers of different colored green stained glass, which is really amazing. And then just the detail is incredible. You can see the iridescent glass tiles, which cover the main beam, geometric mosaics, and then we had also the stained glass lamps. It's really an amazing, amazing work of art in the Engelhard Court. So we do have a lot of Tiffany windows in the Engelhard Court because Tiffany himself donated a number of them. The American Wing was just starting in 1925. He donated a number of his works of art to make sure that he would, be in this museum for a long time. So it's a very smart business move. But we do have stained glass windows, of course, and works of art by other artists, including this stained glass window by Frank Lloyd Wright. And I wanted to show it to you because it's quite different. We're going to look at a Frank Lloyd Wright interior space in a couple of minutes. And this one is very different if you're familiar with Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture or stained glass windows. This one is very different. And that's because it was designed for a kindergarten space. It was actually designed in the early 1900s. In 1907, Frank Lloyd Wright designed the Avery Coonley estate in Riverside, Illinois. And the crowning feature we're actually looking at right here was a playhouse, which would become a kindergarten. And he made 30 of these windows. We're looking at 3 of them here, but he made 30 of them. Very different than his early designs, right? We're used to him being, his designs being a lot about nature and using soft earth tones, which we'll see on an interior space he designed soon. But these windows are purely geometric in composition. They have very bright, vibrant, mostly primary colors. And Frank Lloyd Wright referred to it later on as a Kinder Symphony, or a symphony for children. And many people think that it was really inspired by a parade. We can see the colored glass, and it simulates a haphazard yet controlled arrangement of perhaps the circles are balloons, perhaps the little squares are confetti, and there's even a little American flag here. So it has a feeling of a parade and also has a feeling of, colors and designs and things that kids would enjoy looking at for this kindergarten that was operated by Mrs. Coonley for neighborhood children. So when Frank Lloyd Wright completed the Playhouse in 1912, he was at that time considered America's foremost architect. He was also one of America's top innovators in stained glass windows. And his windows were integral to the design of the whole building. And the Coonley windows are really hailed as a masterpiece, even though they're, again, completely different than a lot of his other works. As you're looking at them, you might see that the windows are often compared to a Mondrian painting or Mondrian design, both color and the geometric shapes. So I want to just look at one more stained glass window from the American Wing courtyard. And this is by another artist named John Lafarge. It's called the Welcome Window. And it's a stained glass window from the house of Mrs. George T. Bliss, another window designed for someone's home. And John Lafarge, the artist who made this window, he was Louis Comfort Tiffany's closest rival in the use of opalescent colored and textured glass. This window was completed 1 year before John Lafarge died, and it was one of his most complex works. It was commissioned in 1908 by Mrs. George T. Bliss for her house at 9 East 68th Street in New York City. It was also designed to be at the top of a staircase, so we see a common theme here. And you can see that it features in the center a young woman in classical garb, and she's welcoming her visitors. That's why it's called the welcome window. Look at how she's holding open her arms, welcoming visitors. While drawing back, you can see she's kind of pushing open a textile, which is a replication in glass. It looks like a textile, but it's made in glass. Of course, the whole thing's made in glass. And it was a textile that it was owned by the Bliss family. So you can see she's kind of pushing this curtain to the side. And this curtain was owned by the Bliss family, and John Lafarge recreated it out of stained glass. It's really quite unbelievable. You can also see that many, many tiny pieces of glass, even glass used to evoke folds in the figure's gown. We also have decorative panels on the side with garlands and ornament and frame the window. This window took over a year to complete, but the artist John Lafarge considered it the finest piece of glass ever made. And just, looking closely, hopefully you can see some of the details. If you look closely at the details, you'll see this, the woman is a life-size figure, and she really dominates the window. And look at how he created out of glass what she's wearing, a shimmering, loose-fitting gown, almost reminiscent of Hellenistic Greek drapery. Her expression on her face is blissful, and her right hand is extended in welcome. And of course, with the left hand, she's opening this amazing curtain, which actually, if you can see under her hand, I mean, it's very detailed. There's a golden pheasant underneath with colorful feathers. There are all kinds of flowers on the steps. We even see her feet. She's wearing sandals. It's unbelievably detailed and decorative, and it's really a masterful window created in 1909. And again, like Tiffany's windows, looks like a painting. So it's really just an incredible work of art. I want to show you what it looks like. This is just so you get an idea of the size of it. This is a picture of me from a little while ago when we still had to wear masks at the museum, but you'll see the size of the window. This is actually a picture of, you can't see it, but it's a picture of the home that it was in. And just to see where it is in the space in the Engelhard Court, it's over here, right near this entrance towards the painting wings, but you see how large it is. This is the first floor, and this is the balcony. So you see it's really quite a large window. Now, before we move on to our interior spaces, I just want to take a little quick virtual tour so you can see the Engelhard Court. Now, again, please remember that the virtual tour was done in 2010. So most of all these windows are the same. The space is very similar, but the details are a little bit hard to see. But again, I just want to get a feel for the space. So all the windows we've been talking about, you can see in the virtual tour. Okay, so we're going to go to okay, so here we are in the American Wing, and you'll notice it from the picture and the video. So we have the bank facade here. And this is, as I said, it's a wonderful inside-outside space, which you can see out these windows into Central Park. There's actually a cafe here, which is wonderful to look at. Opposite the bank facade is the the columns that we were looking at from Laurelton Hall and the hanging lamps. And of course, this is the space that the new garden landscape is in, but this was done before that was, of course, incorporated. But let's look at some of the other windows that we've been talking about. If you go through here, you can see, and because of the light from the windows, that the lighting often is not, skews some of the works of art. But this is that tremendous autumn landscape window that we were looking at, that Agnes Northrop also created. Whoops, we went right through into Arms and Armor Gallery, which are next door. Okay, so that's the autumn landscape over here that we were looking at. If you make your way down this hall, again, so we didn't see this, but this is another Tiffany work of art. It's actually a mosaic fountain that he donated to the Met. And if you go down this hall, you might recognize the space. First of all, we have, again, the bank facade to the left, but you'll recognize this eagle from that picture I showed you. And we have the John Lafarge welcome window right next to it. So it's kind of, you can see right to the right of the bank facade. And the Frank Lloyd Wright window that we looked at with all the colors is actually on the second floor. It's very hard to see because of the light coming in from Central Park. So again, just to give you an idea of this tremendous space that we saw in the video, and then we saw some of the stained glass windows. Now we're going to now look at some interior spaces, which are called period rooms. And the first one we're going to look at actually is from a Frank Lloyd Wright room, because I referred to that. The room is actually over here to the side. The virtual tour does not allow us to go in the room. I will show you, oops, I'll show you where it is. It's right off of the cafe over here, actually. So if you go down these steps to the left of the bank facade, that's where the Frank Lloyd Wright is, but it doesn't allow us to go on the virtual tour. So we're going to go back to our slides, and we're going to discover some of these amazing period rooms that we have at the Met. Okay, so here is the first inside space we're going to be looking at. And this is a living room from a home called the Francis W. Little House. This was the original living room of the summer residence of Francis W. Little. It was designed and built between 1912 and 1914 in Wayzata, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. So just take a few minutes to look at this room, and we will discover it. I have several pictures because, as I said, we can't do a virtual tour, but I have several pictures that we'll be able to see it. But as you're looking at, just think about, Frank Lloyd Wright and merging nature, and we'll see all of that in this room. This room really epitomizes Wright's concept of what he called organic architecture, in which the building, the setting, the interior, and the furnishings are inextricably related. So every detail of the design fit with every part, with every other part, including the colors, the materials, and the shapes that he used inside and out. He saw the building and landscape around it as one space, and you can see the huge stained glass windows and all the light that's coming in that allows this connection between nature, inside and outside, building and landscape. He wanted everything in the room to blend with the forest and the lakefront that were outside of the original house. And the Met has situated it so that you can look out into Central Park from these windows. So it really has a feeling of the house that it was a part of. Okay, let's look at a few more details of this room. So the Frank Lloyd Wright room also shows one of Wright's most important contributions to modern architecture, which is the idea of spatial continuity. You can notice the low overhanging roof, the geometric windows that we can see here, and the windows have a lot of plant motifs in them and also geometric shapes, which allowed the homeowners to look at the wooded site outside of their windows. The living room itself is not merely a single enclosed volume, but a series of horizontal levels surrounded by glass, which again allows an interplay of natural light and the rich earthy tones that Wright employed throughout the room. So this is really the colors and the materials that Frank Lloyd Wright usually used, very different than the geometric window that we saw earlier. Okay, here's another view. And we can really see the natural oak trim and the flooring. I want to just show you the fireplace. Here we go. So here you can really see the natural oak trim and the flooring, the use of the exterior reddish brown bricks for the fireplace, and also all the stained glass windows. The center of the room, you'll notice, is empty, and the furniture groupings kind of enliven the peripheral space. But the center is empty, which is, again, very typical of Frank Lloyd Wright, how he designed rooms. Many of the accessories are very similar to those in the original room. They're not all from the original room, but they're all similar and Frank Lloyd Wright furniture. You can see it's a very long, spacious room. And when Wright designed the furniture, he thought about how it was used and how, when he was designing furniture, he always had in mind how the furniture would be used and also how he might make it better. So, for example, if you notice, the sofa that's kind of on the edge here, it's facing the fireplace. It has big, comfortable seats. I'll show you a close-up of this sofa. Big, comfortable seats. What else do you notice about it? It has very wide arms, which weren't just wide arms, but they could also be used as tables. So again, he was always trying to figure out how to make furniture use better. Look how you can see here, what's on the arms of that sofa. So, and again, you can see the windows here. Some have plant motifs, some geometric, but again, the earthy tones, very, very different than the colorful windows we were looking at before. This is just, again, these are amazing spaces, and all these different period rooms in the Met really evoke different artists, different time periods, different types of furniture. So this one, as I said, is one of the newer ones from 1914. We're going to now go back in time to look at a couple of other period rooms together. Here we have a parlor room from the William C. Williams house. This was made in Richmond, Virginia, between about 1810 and 1811. And it was acquired from a house that was built for a Richmond lawyer whose name was William Clayton Williams. As you're looking at the room, you'll notice that the most notable features are its rich mahogany woodwork and the blue and gray King of Prussia marble baseboards. You'll also notice the wallpaper, which features scenes of Paris, and it's a reproduction of the type that was sold in the United States in the 1810s. Remember, then Paris was really seen as the capital for furniture and other things. So you have monuments of Paris all around on the wallpaper. Also notice the furniture. A lot of it was designed by Duncan Phyfe, who was one of the 19th century's leading cabinet makers in America. This furniture, by the way, is not original to the room, but it is furniture from the time period of this room, and it further enhances the sophisticated Anglo-French aesthetic of the room. The carpet that you can see here, also French. It's a French woven carpet, circa 1800. I want to show you some details of this wallpaper. This is a section of the wallpaper. The wallpaper, by the way, as I said, it's a copy of a popular French pattern. This wallpaper was called The Monuments of Paris. And it depicts famous sites in Paris as if they stood all together along the banks of the Seine River. There's also amazing furniture in this room. So as you're looking at the room, notice the sofa and the side chairs, because now I'm going to show you a close-up of them and learn a little bit more of those. These were both attributed to Duncan Phyfe around 1810 to 1820, and they are part of a large suite of seating furniture in the museum's collection. And the furniture, as I said, it was not from the room. This furniture was actually owned by someone named Thomas Purcell, who was a wealthy New York merchant and ship owner. And he owned a lot of this Duncan Phyfe furniture. And we know that it was done by Duncan Phyfe because, first of all, there's a stamp inside of it that attributes the furniture to him, but also that the detail and the way it's made is very typical of Duncan Phyfe's style. So it's just amazing to look at this furniture, the detail, look at the feet on the furniture, and it's really quite amazing. Okay, our next room is a mantle from the drawing room of the Craig House in Baltimore, Maryland. This is from 1810, also the same time period as our last room. And the architectural elements of this room it's referred to as the Baltimore Room, are from the parlor of a brick row house built for Henry Craig between 1810 and 1811. The parlor was the most important room in his dwelling, and it was used, as you can see, of course, to entertain guests. So it had very fine woodwork, which you can see as you're looking at this room. Okay, our next room is, we're going kind of back in time. This is a room from the Powell House in Philadelphia. So you see that these rooms are from many different states that we're going through. It was the home was made in 1765 to 66. And it was at 244 South 3rd Street in Philadelphia. It was a home owned by shipmaster merchant Charles Stedman. But because of declining fortunes, he had to sell his house almost immediately after its completion, and it was purchased in 1769 by Samuel Powell for 3,150 pounds. Powell was a wealthy young man, and he purchased the home a couple days before he got married, and he immediately set to redesigning it, which he did between 1769 and 1771, and he wanted to reflect his wealth, taste, and refinement. Now, the room's initial function is a bit unclear because it was located behind a ballroom on the 2nd floor of his home. It might have been used in conjunction with a ballroom for refreshments. It might have been the house's best bedchamber, we're not sure. But Powell employed some of Philadelphia's finest craftsmen when he was remodeling this room. Notice all the details as I'm talking about it. Notice the marble fireplace, the decorative wallpaper. Powell would actually go on to serve as the last mayor of Philadelphia under British rule. And after the Revolution, he was the first mayor under when it was after the British rule. And he frequently entertained such important guests as George Washington and John Adams, who were both quite impressed with this home. So I just want to point out 2 pieces of furniture. Again, we could go in great detail with all these rooms, just each piece of furniture, but I just want to point out 2 pieces of furniture. Notice the table in the center, and I'll show it to you a little bit closer up, and notice the needlepoint carpet, both of which we're going to look at. So here's the tilt top table. It's from 1765. It was made in Philadelphia out of mahogany. And interesting, these types of furniture were associated with social interactions, especially the serving and drinking of tea. And they were indispensable parts of fashionable parlors, as we saw, during the second half of the 18th century. They're called tilt-top tea tables. And you'll see they feature a single pillar supported by 3 legs, and they could be placed against a wall for storage when their tops were tilted to a vertical position. We'll see a similar piece of furniture, but notice how useful it is that when it wasn't used, they would tilt the top and kind of push it against the wall. And here we have the needlepoint carpet. This was made in 1764 in England. It's made out of wool. And carpets were a considerable luxury in colonial America. Until the mid-18th century, owners spread textiles over tables sometimes instead of on floors, which we'll see in our next room. This cross-stitch example has floral and geometric motifs. And you can also might notice it's very small, but actually has quotations from Edward Young's Night Thoughts, which was a poem about life, death, and immortality that was written in 1742. And it's very, very small, written over here. But it's amazing, like the floral design and the poem that we see on here. Okay, our next room is from the Wentworth House, and I wanted to show you this because I had referred to before that carpets were such a luxury that they were often spread over tables rather than put on floors, and you can see that in this room, the Wentworth House, which is from 1695 to 1700. It's from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, in the United States, and it has many different types of wood. Oak and pine are 2 of the most prominent. So in 1926, the Met actually purchased the entire Wentworth House. That was a year after the American Wing was created. The Wentworth House, as I said, was built between 1695 and 1700 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The original intention was to dismantle the structure and incorporate its interior into the American Wing. But right now, only 2 spaces from the house remain in the American Wing. The main stair, which is known as the and Wentworth staircase, which we see here, and then the largest room from the second floor, which we see here. The original owner of the home was John Wentworth. He was a merchant sea captain and one-time lieutenant governor of New Hampshire. The house was unusually grand in scale. Keep in mind, again, we're talking about 1695. And just you'll notice all the amazing details here and also in the staircase that we're looking at. This second floor room is distinguished as one of the largest domestic interiors surviving from the early colonial period. And it's furnished with a combination of English and American-made furniture in the William and Mary or early Baroque style. So again, these are just amazing interiors. I just want to show you two more of them. This one is actually the earliest room that we have in the museum. So I started with the most recent one, the Frank Lloyd Wright from 1912. This is the earliest one. It's from a room from the Hart House from Ipswich, Massachusetts, from 1680. And also has a lot of wood in it, different types of wood, mainly oak and pine. So this is the earliest period room that we have in the American wing. It's on the third floor of the American wing. And its architectural elements are typical of 17th century New England interiors. And the furnishings are fine examples of late 17th century Massachusetts made furniture. And it's really a melding of late Renaissance and also Mannerist designs from Northern Europe and England. And also craft pieces brought to the colonies by English joiners and turners. As you're looking at the furniture, just please also notice the windows and the all the woodwork and the ceiling also. It's really unbelievable. The room that we see here is from the home of Samuel and Sarah Norton Hart. That's why it's called the Hart Room. They lived in Ipswich, Massachusetts. This is actually a picture of the home that the room was taken from. And Samuel Hart, he was a first generation New Englander. He was a tanner by trade. And the house was completed within 2 years of his marriage in 1678. Now, this picture is from the Hart House from 1890. And the room on display at the Met came from the first story to the left of the door. Now, this room is really a study in contrast. Really compare the massive oak timbers with notice, the very large wood beams, but now notice the very, very small windows, because of course glass was very expensive in 1680. So it's very, very tiny, tiny windows. But it's just, all the furnishings, all the beams from the home are really incredible. The bed is probably the most expensive item. Notice the closable bed hangings, which offered warmth and privacy. And they were made of heavy woolen cloth that matched the upholstered furniture in the room. The furniture also reflects the craft practices of English immigrant artisans who settled coastal Massachusetts between the 1660s and 1690s, when this room is from. The raw materials for furniture making were plentiful throughout New England. I just want to show you a couple. You might notice on the side here, this table, another one of these table chairs that we had seen, the T-tilt table before. So here is it, just so you can see it a little bit closer up. And again, it's a convertible furniture form. It's called the chair table. So it has this hinged top that can pivot up to become the back of a seat, or down to serve as a table. And these distinctive objects were well suited to rooms where many different activities took place. Because the room that we were looking at, the Hart Room, it actually was one big room, which had both the bed, the parents' bed, the baby cradle, but also on the other side of the room has this fireplace, which you might notice was a fireplace that was not just for warmth, but was also for cooking. You'll notice a pot above the fire. This is an amazing piece over here. If you see this piece with a large handle and the gold, this was a bed warmer. So they would put the bottom of the bed in the fireplace, and then they would put it under the bed when it was heated up to keep the bed warm. And notice also the long handles on these fry pans, so they could fry something and not get too close to the fire. The pot that stood over the fire, and then this was their oven. This hole right here, that was their oven where they would put pots to keep things warm. So this is really an incredible space also in the Met. And the last one we're going to look at that we'll end with is architectural elements from a retiring room from North from New Lebanon, New York, or the shorter name is called the Shaker Room. This one's from 1830 or 1840. And I thought it was interesting to do after the Heart Room because we have here again another multi-purpose room. Notice this, compare it to the Heart Room in terms of color and design and things like that. And you'll understand more about the Shakers, right? So the Shakers were a socially progressive Protestant sect that believed in racial and sexual equality. They also believed in pacifism and common property. By the mid-19th century, the Shakers had established 18 communes from Maine to Connecticut for nearly 6,000 members. This room has been installed with architectural elements from a dwelling in Mount Lebanon in upstate New York, as well as the furniture you're looking at is Shaker-made furniture and textiles. So this room was taken from a 5-story building designated for one of Mount Lebanon's 8 work and faith units, or they call them families. And these 5-story buildings, which would contain kitchens, dining rooms, a large chapel, and meeting rooms. And this is the retiring room. As you can see, this room served as both a bedroom and also a place to retire to spend time in before attending services or meetings. Originally, the room would have had several beds in it for the number of women who would share this room. So as you're looking at it, please, it's an incredible room. Notice the simplicity and order that prevail, and also the Spartan nature of this room. Each object in this room served a practical purpose. Here we can see the neatly boxed cast iron stove in the center of the room, which distributed heat evenly. Again, compare that to the Heart Room where the fireplace was, on one side and what it was used for. But here it's in the middle of the room to distribute heat evenly. On the right, you can see a plain white pine washstand and a towel rack. Again, this room was originally shared by 4 sisters of the Mount Lebanon community, so there would have been more beds, but they slept here. They sewed at a work table, or they would sew on this rocking chair. And you can see the 2-step footrest near the rocker. So while she was sewing, she could put one foot above the other to elevate the stitchery in her lap to a height that's convenient for working. Again, everything in this room had a practical purpose. Just looking a little bit more at this room. The Shakers believed that work was a form of worship when it was done for the benefit of the community. Notice the bed in the back. It has very large, non-pivoting wooden wheels, which allowed the bed to be pulled straight up from the wall for efficient cleaning and changing of the bed. Again, everything has a practical purpose. Also, Shaker law stated that bed covers had to be modest and no pattern. Notice there's very little color or pattern in this room. The other thing that's so interesting about this room, here we go. Notice along the wall, all the way along the wall is a pegboard that goes all the way around the room. And you could see that there's a chair hanging on the pegboard. The Shakers lined almost every room with pegboards on which all kinds of spare items would be hung when they weren't in use. Again, a symbol of order and convenience. So anytime they had to clean or they didn't need an object, they would hang it from that pegboard. So you'll notice in this room, the built-in cupboards, the pegboards, the austere furnishings, and the woodwork. All this room is showing us 3 of the most typical characteristics of Shaker design, which is utility, simplicity, and beauty. And here you can see just a little bigger, the rocking chair and the bed that I talked about with the wheels. Okay, so before we open up to questions, I just want to go back into our virtual tour so you can see at least where some of these period rooms are in the Met. And they're actually in a room in an area right behind the bank facade. We can't go in through the front door because usually you can walk in through here, but the virtual tour won't let us do that. So we're going to go in from the side. Okay, so if you go in here and you'll notice lots of furniture. So these are the front doors of the bank facade on the inside. And this is the inside. And all around this area, all these side rooms have period rooms in them. They'll only let us go into certain ones. To some of these we saw together and some of these we don't. But again, it gives you an idea of what they look like and how many, as I said, there are 20 period rooms in the American wing. We didn't see this one, but we did see this one. This was the room with the wallpaper with the Paris monuments in it. So again, just gives you an idea of where the period rooms are in the museum and what this amazing space looks like. Okay, so I think we're going to end here because I want to leave time for questions. I referred to this at the beginning, so I just wanted to show you, but I talked about the open storage space, the Henry Luce Center for the Study of American Art, the open storage space. So you can actually go on the Met's website, and this is what the storage space, the map of the storage space, and you can click on each of these numbers and see what's in the cases in these different spaces. And you can see, depending on the color, there's decorative arts, there are paintings, there's sculpture, furniture, but it's all open storage space filled with amazing objects. For some reason, it's not letting me click on. But again, that's another amazing part of the American Wing. So hopefully through this virtual tour and PowerPoint of the stained glass windows and the Engelhard Court and some of the period rooms, you got a taste of the American Wing and the amazing centennial celebration. Oh, something did open. One of the cases open. Not such an interesting one. Case 31 has lots of shovels. But anyway, you can click on these and see some of the amazing spaces. But it's taking a lot of time now. So I won't do that because I want to leave time if anyone has any questions.
So I would suggest closing out the slides so we can see everybody's faces.
Great.
Okay. So the first thing, just beautiful, inspiring. And I need to make a trip to New York because I got to see this in person. Have feedback, a question from Fran. When these windows are commissioned, is the direction of the light considered? And how do we move the windows?
Yes. So when they were, I don't know if the direction of the light was considered, but it's interesting. In the Met, some of the windows they actually have natural sunlight coming through them, like they're the sunlight from Central Park. But a number of them, I don't know if you noticed the ones like the autumn landscape, the three-part garden landscape, and the welcome window, those are all against walls. So those are all lit by artificial light. Right. And I'm trying to think, even in some of the homes, I don't think they were considering actually natural light, because even in some of the homes that I'm thinking of that they were designed for, they were, against walls. Like even if you saw on the picture I showed you of the Linden Hall, Sarah Cochran's home, it was at the top of the stairs and it wasn't a window there. So right. They weren't considering natural light when they were creating them. In terms of moving them, it's a very, what can I say? They're not moved in sections, so it has to be done very carefully. A lot of work and a lot of insurance when they were moved.
So you got lots of good feedback in the chat room. Wonderful to see those intricate windows and furnishings. Fascinating, well done. Magic. It really was magical. I have a question about the Frank Lloyd Wright room that you showed with all of the stained glass or leaded glass, I should say. Did he have a special artist he worked with? I'm assuming it wasn't Tiffany.
Right. No, so he didn't work with Tiffany. He also had a lot of these, especially he was the architect, he would design the room, but he had other people who would create them. But those were based on his designs, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, he definitely had help making them, implementing them. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, Rita, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah. Hi. Elena, as usual, wonderful. Just amazing. It makes like that's your mom, right? That said she wanted to go to the Met. Yeah, that's something that is a dream, but I don't know that it's ever going to happen. Um, my question is that you mentioned other cultural art in the beginning, like African American and um, Native American.
Native American.
Yeah. Um, is there any of those that you have put together in this kind of presentation or is available for that?
Yeah, that's something to think about. They recently opened like a whole wing of Native American art. Um, and that's kind of a separate area. Actually, behind the Frank Lloyd Wright ring, there's the Frank Lloyd Wright room. There's a whole huge gallery space that's dedicated to Native American art. But in general, also Native American art, African American art, they're interspersed throughout the galleries. So it's something to think about for a future talk. As I said, we could do many, many series of just in the American wing. I mean, I think I only got to 6 or 7 periods room. There are 20. There's so much to explore. But yeah, it's a good idea to have suggestions of future topics.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm just checking to see if anybody's. Oh, I don't think so. It was just a beautiful presentation, Elana. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank
And,
you, Laura. Thank you,
yeah.
Laura.
We'll see you again
Yeah.
soon, I hope.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.